In F.A. Hayek's Fatal Conceit, he drops an absolute bombshell of a quote on us, and I think it applies to far more things than economics. It goes as follows: the curious task of economics is to teach men how little they really know about what they think they can design. And a perfect example of this is this philosophy that we're not going to fight out lawsuits that has been taken up by almost everyone, including the New York City Legal Corporation, because it's just cheaper to do so. It's just cheaper that way. And honestly, you don't have to worry about it because you're going to save money, because all these people who, by the way, were never conservative with your tax dollars ever, tell you that this is the more conservative option. Now, we've seen this philosophy of it not being worth it play out in many different areas in New York City. For instance, people will say it's not worth it to stop somebody, arrest them for jumping the turnstiles because the train only really costs $3, and the fact of the matter is you'll spend way more time and way more money actually holding that person in jail than you would if you just let them jump the turnstiles. But what this doesn't take into account is the fact that human beings respond to incentives and disincentives. One person being arrested or a few people being arrested at the train station for jumping the turnstiles could lead to thousands of people paying for the train, and on net, guess what? You would be a beneficiary of that. Fighting back against fraudulent lawsuits at the citywide level might cost you more than any individual settlement, but guess what? That might deter people from filing lawsuits so frivolously. Well, guess what? Because this is the philosophy that we are governed by in New York City, the criminals have taken notice. And now New York City has surpassed all other places in the nation in terms of fraudulent slip and fall claims. And by the way, when they're committed in front of private properties, buildings, they end up resulting in rent increases for everyone in the building because according to New York City law, you are responsible for the sidewalk that is in front of your property. So we're going to break this down. I'm going to show you some absolutely comedic videos, and then I'm going to explain to you how it's no laughing matter. But first, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money, okay?
We talk about how expensive it is to live in this city all the time, so you want to manage the money that we do have, right? Make sure it's spent for things that we really need it. One thing that's driving up all of our costs is insurance rates.
So this local news segment opens up with a very suspicious scene that we're going to learn about a little bit later. But as you can see, two individuals end up pulling up on a motorbike and peeling up part of a sidewalk, creating a crack. And later on, one individual ends up fake tripping and grabbing his hamstring and seemingly claiming that he was injured by said gap in the sidewalk. Well, that actually is footage from a lawsuit in New York City. And the sad thing about this is that even though that case has a lawyer that is fighting it, a lot of these cases get settled even when there are bad videos like this that make the person look clearly guilty. And this is rampant across New York City. And again, we're going to focus on the private property landlords, but I want to talk about one of the most sketchy slip and fall instances that have ever occurred. And this, of course, involves Al Sharpton's daughter.
And then a mountain of questions this morning. This is quite a story surrounding a $5 million lawsuit filed by Al Sharpton's daughter against New York City. Dominique Sharpton is her name. And she says she sprained her ankle when she fell on uneven pavement in New York City last October.
Who was suing the city of New York for $5 million because she said she irreparably damaged her ankle by slipping in a New York City pothole. And of course, this was after Bill de Blasio was elected and he appointed Al Sharpton's personal attorney to the head of the New York City Legal Corporation, so you can understand why this seemed very suspicious. Well, she was all set to get that $5 million of New York City taxpayer money, but then the New York Post discovered the complaint, discovered that the settlement was pending, and they produced footage from later that night of her dancing with her father at an event in New York City, and then additional footage of her dancing in a foreign country because she went on to party while she was claiming to be disabled.
Saying that tumble has left her severely injured. But take a look at this. It's her Instagram account, and it tells a very different story. Currently vacationing in Bali, Indonesia, Dominique just posted a picture on top of a mountain. And here she is, hiking about a month ago, somewhere else. Now, around the same time, she's also seen in a photograph wearing high heels.
Well, guess what? Even though in slip and fall pothole cases, you normally get about $10,000 or $20,000, she still got $90,000. And the fact that that is the attitude from the New York City Legal Corporation seems to trickle down to each and every other aspect of New York City, and couple that with the fact that we don't have law enforcement, so obvious instances of fraud like this aren't charged, even though you could charge fraud and perjury, you end up with a nightmare scenario that put New York #1 in fraudulent slip and fall claims.
Right. So when accidents occur, lawsuits can be filed, investigations take place, settlements sometimes happen. Insurance costs then go up.
So look, if you're a podcast listener, I want to say from me to you, I appreciate you. I care for you. But this is not the video to not be watching the video. They just gave us a split screen of 3 different slips and falls, and holy crap, the acting is absolutely terrible. Now, we are fortunate enough that we have full screen versions of some of these videos, so believe me, I will be commenting on that later, but damn, this is not even close to a legitimate looking fall in any of these videos.
On owners, and owners try to offset the extra expense by charging tenants more.
What is that? Seriously, what the hell was that? This guy didn't even appear to trip over any kind of obstruction on the sidewalk. He just stopped and slowly, like seriously, in slow motion, and I did not slow down the video. If anything, I usually speed up the video in order to avoid a content ID claim. He stumbled to the ground and laid face down. And by the way, we're going to get an update on what this absolute idiot in this video claims, but that is what he went for in this moment for his slip and fall claim that, of course, resulted in a lawsuit. That, of course, has an ongoing case. That, of course, doesn't have him charged criminally, even though this video alone should not only result in him being charged with fraud, but honestly is a justification for bringing back banishment, because if you fall this poorly, if you can't even do that right, you're useless to society. Put these people on an island, make them fend for themselves for a year, and if they prove themselves worthy, if they survive, then maybe, just maybe, after they apologize, we can let them back into society.
Well, now for the frustrating part. Of course, some of these claims are total fakes, basically.
I'm trying to take this seriously. It is a serious story, but that may be, in full screen, the worst slip and fall I ever seen in my entire life. This guy dove into a barrel roll. He must have moved about 15 or 20 feet on the concrete. Then he moves his leg in because he thought his position was too unbelievable. He thought he nailed the fall. And he thinks that that is good enough. He waits for the ambulance right there. And of course, this results in a lawsuit. And I'm sad to say, this guy may get money for that stupid ass fall. This is essentially like when you have a stage actor and they first make the transition to film, and in stage you have to project, you have to move all animated like, but on film it looks ridiculous and absurd. That's what this guy is giving me right here. High school stage actor energy, and we're supposed to take this seriously. This is something that is not being criminally charged. Where is the Bronx DA on this? Well, I know where she is on this. She's not charging anyone for anything because she's actually woker than DA Alvin Bragg, and she thinks that this person, this idiot, this buffoon who can't even fall correctly is somebody who is victimized by society. Now, I understand this guy might have gotten dealt a bad hand. He thinks that's believable. He has to have an insanely low IQ. He has to be possibly brain damaged already. Maybe he could argue that's the reason why he fell or get money for that. But holy crap, that was terrible.
Of course, some of these claims are total fakes, basically.
See a bunch of them right here.
I like how the local news person, when you're watching the fakest video I've ever seen, in fact, let me edit in some absurd sound effects with it so you can understand how bad it is. It's saying, the thing is, some of these are actually fake, and the other local news people are laughing. They're like, yeah, we've been running the B-roll of this. They're not only fake, but they're obviously fake.
Of course, some of these claims are total fakes, basically.
See a bunch of them right here.
So the local news person ends up explaining in detail, and again, I will link this in the description, that if you're a property owner, you're on the hook for the sidewalk in front of your property. And what ends up happening is that when people stage these slips and falls and a claim is filed against the landlord, whether it's fraudulent or not, the insurance company raises the premiums, much like in your auto insurance, because a claim has been filed. Then the landlord, who now has to deal with that, higher insurance premiums and higher lawyer lawyer, whether they intend to fight this out or settle it, and by the way, they have to pay the settlement, ends up raising the rent of all the tenants. This is a way that crime drives people into poverty, not the other way around, and it is the tenants that often suffer due to this. But they're going to give us a detailed breakdown of this particular crime, the one you saw in the open with the scooter, where they rip up the sidewalk, and then all of a sudden, a little later on, coincidentally, somebody has the fakest fall ever in said spot, because I think it is quite instructive of how absurd our system actually is, because when you see what he was doing initially versus what he's claiming in court, you realize it doesn't even align. He can't even keep his story straight.
Look at this sidewalk in the Bronx. There's no visible damage. Along come two men on a scooter.
They get off the scooter, and you see one of them breaking up the sidewalk.
Minutes later, there's a long black hole in the sidewalk.
Fast forward to about 2 a.m., so it's early the next morning. You see a gentleman walking in the same area, and all of a sudden, he kind of drags his foot, and he just falls.
Now look, that guy looks like the same person. Now the original person had tattoos on his arm, and since this is on surveillance video, it should be pretty easy for us to see whether or not this is the same person or an accomplice of that person. But I wouldn't be surprised if they were one and the same, because overall, similar builds.
The man filed an injury claim against the owner of the building where the sidewalk is located. The building's attorney, Mark Sloan, is fighting the claim and suspects the chain of events are no coincidence.
He's claiming he injured his left knee. He's claiming he injured his right knee. And he's also claiming psychological injuries and that he can't work. What are the coincidences that a person, two people, whatever, just pull up, get off a bike, and just start breaking up a sidewalk, and then X amount of hours later, somebody just happens to allegedly trip and fall over a defect that didn't exist prior to a few hours before the incident?
Look, I like how the lawyer and everybody has to dance around this, but I'm not going to do so. I understand that I'm alleging fraud. We all get that. But come on. He grabs his hamstring. That's what happened on the video. I can zoom in on that. That was the initial thing that he was going for. But then he's suing for injuries to his left knee, his right knee. He's completely incapable of working. I don't know if you guys know this, but he was a high-end STEM field worker before this. And then, of course, he says he has psychological damage from the crack in the sidewalk. He took a tumble and he's psychologically damaged because there's sidewalks everywhere. I don't know if you guys know that. And he has developed a phobia of that, so he needs the money. You gotta give him the money, as Anna Kasparian would say.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay?
Like, to me, this is obviously something that is worthy of a criminal investigation. This is obviously something that is worthy of a perjury investigation. You filed this, and it appears to be so fraudulent, it's absurd, in a court of law, and there are no consequences for it. And the fact that there are no consequences for it is why this continues. It's why New York City surpassed all these other places to become one of the highest for suspicious slip and fall cases in the entire nation.
It's 100% fraud.
According to the National Insurance Crime Bureau, New York City is the #1 city in the country for questionable slip and fall claims.
Now, at first, I thought New York City was going to be #1 on this list because of population. But the fact of the matter is, this is a proportioned list. So New York City is #1 on the list because per capita, they have the most amount of these claims. Now, this could be due to a number of factors, like the fact that you are responsible for maintaining the sidewalk in front of your property, and that might not be true in other places. But look at the other cities on this list and tell me if you don't notice something else that's in common. Now, I'm not sure about the city of Las Vegas, to be perfectly honest, but 4 of the 5 cities right here have a Soros district attorney, a woke prosecutor. And honestly, Houston had one that was originally backed by Soros, but then she decided to change things up due to political pressure. I'm talking about Kim Ogg. But overall, I think this is a coincidence that cannot be overlooked. And by the way, New York City actually has 2 to 3 of these district attorneys. Alvin Bragg is the one for Manhattan that everybody knows, but the Bronx district attorney is actually worse than the Manhattan district attorney, followed by the Queens district attorney as well, who might not be directly funded, but she's definitely one of these reformist DAs. So none of these people have any chance of being charged for fraud. They're not going to go to prison for that fraud. And what a coincidence that 4 of these 5 cities right here before your very eyes are the most most likely for this to happen per capita. What a surprise that when you install prosecutors who won't pursue cases because they're nonviolent and supposedly that makes them non-serious, that you would have these kind of crimes exploding in this particular category.
We obtained video after video showing questionable trip and fall incidents on New York sidewalks. In one of them, a building owner told us the man in this video claimed he was so severely injured on the sidewalk that he was disabled. He filed a lawsuit against the building owner.
You know, the guy who slipped and fell and rolled over like an absolute idiot may have the most absurd on its surface looking slip and fall. The peeling up of the sidewalk hours before somebody happened to trip on that crack may be one of the most suspicious ones, but this one should not be underrated by anyone out there in the audience. There is almost no visible defect right here on the surveillance video. However, there is a discoloration right here. It looks like a little square where you might have a case for something. But the reason that I point that out is if you notice very closely in the video, when you zoom in, he steps over that. That is not a thing that he actually tripped over. And this guy is not only complaining that this slow motion fall injured him, but he's saying he is permanently disabled. He needs permanent medical attention for that thing that he clearly did not trip over.
Who spoke with us but did not want to be identified.
I feel this is like some type of setup that goes on beyond our control.
According to court documents, the law firm representing the man later withdrew from the lawsuit, saying the firm had ethical concerns. A judge dismissed the case.
So this guy didn't want to identify himself, but you can clearly and obviously see he is a Jewish guy. And if you're the person who filed this lawsuit, you know what building you filed it against. So you have this person's name. So to me, the concealment makes no sense at all. But yeah, in this particular case, this one was so bad. Again, based on what I pointed out, thankfully it was withdrawn. But the fact of the matter is, this landlord already has to pay those higher premiums, even though the case was adjudicated to be fraudulent.
But it's too late for the building owner. He owes his insurance company a $10,000 deductible because they had to investigate the claim.
These costs are not a freebie. Somebody needs to bear them.
This guy had to pay his insurance a $10,000 deductible. And then you have this guy says this cost is not a freebie. Somebody has to pay them. And I can't help but think in a sensible society that there is actually somebody who should be on the hook for this. There is an individual in this situation who should have to fork over that $10,000. And in fact, he's sprawled out on the sidewalk right now claiming that he's permanently disabled. Charge that guy the $10,000. And if he can't pay it, if you don't want to do that, you don't want to take civil action, I got an even more brilliant idea. Just think about it. Charge him with grand larceny, with fraud on a grand scale, a felony, and put him in prison. He just deprived this man of $10,000 for an obvious fraud that's so embarrassingly blatant to the eye that his law firm dropped out and a judge in New York dismissed it. Charge this man with a crime. That is a criminal right there. He deserves to be in prison. He deserves to pay that off. But nobody even thinks about doing that in this city because God forbid we deter any kind of future criminal behavior.
Fake slip and fall claims lead to renters paying more in rent and homeowners paying more in their insurance.
I hope that people will understand that they suffer as a result of this.
The ones who aren't suffering, the people profiting off these fake claims, raking in big bucks in settlements.
Look, I told you guys that rolling claim was the absolute dumbest of the dumb. This guy lays flat. He moves his leg in because he thinks that's an unbelievable posture. But when somebody comes by, he's quite literally rocking back and forth. Who the hell believes this? And unfortunately, in the city, it doesn't matter whether this is believable or not. It doesn't matter how fraudulent the video looks. If you're the property owner in this particular case, you end up paying through the nose based on this claim. And if you happen to be smart enough to peel up the concrete or do one of these scams in front of a New York City owned building, which by the way, they own about 1 million units in the city of New York, so there are plenty of those buildings, you'll get a settlement from the New York Legal Corporation because it's just too expensive to fight out these cases. It would be too absurd for us to actually battle this out and prove this person a fraud, so it's better to reward the bad behavior rather than actually punish it.
Remember this case from earlier in our story. Court documents obtained by Eyewitness News show one of these guys taking photos and measurements of the sidewalk damage is tied to the legal team representing, you guessed it, the man who slipped and fell.
It's not legitimate. It's fraud.
So I had speculated because one of these guys had a similar build to the person who, actually ended up doing the slip and fall, that they could be the same person. And right here, I was proven wrong. I should probably watch the entirety of the news segment before I cover it. And you know what? I'm not even going to edit out my mistake, because guess what? This is much better. These guys made the hole in the sidewalk. They made this. You can see it on video, these two in a tandem, and then they measured it, took their photos, the photos that showed up in the court, even though the fall hadn't occurred yet. And coincidentally, these two people are tied to this guy's defense, so this is completely staged, which means you should charge these guys with the fraud, you should charge the person who did the slip and fall, and also the attorney, because maybe the attorney authorized this fraud in the first place. If you get some actual consequences for a case like this, then maybe you won't see it happen again. But instead, this is allowed to be let go, and everyday New Yorkers pay the price for this, even though this is obviously staged.
Shortly after we reached out to the law firm about this, the firm dropped the case. They submitted a letter to the judge saying that their client, the man who fell in that video, may have committed fraud. The law firm did not respond to our emails or calls for comment.
So we get a good outcome right here in that the case is actually being dropped by the law firm, but we also have some interesting information being submitted to the court. They said the client might be engaged in fraud, but remember, if you heard the local news report, these two people who made the hole are connected to the law firm, at least one of them. So what's up with that? Did the law firm know? Obviously, they're going to try to distance themselves, but the fact of the matter is that these kind of shady practices are not surprising to me, so whether or not they remain alleged in this incident or proven later, it doesn't mean that other firms aren't doing similar or even worse.
The New York City Comptroller says in fiscal year 2023 alone, the city spent $53.5 million in taxpayer money on sidewalk slip and fall claims.
And again, if you're somebody who says, I don't care about the landlords because, landlords, and you're an absolute idiot and you don't realize that results in rent increases for everyone else, right there you hear that the taxpayer is forked over $53 million in these exact claims, and that is exponentially up because guess what? It's a consequence of you not fighting these cases under the mistaken belief that it would be cheaper not to do so. It may be cheaper to settle in individual cases, but guess what? The net cases are so much higher that you're definitely paying more for them. Look, I appreciate the local news doing this segment. These kind of stories have value. They may not have the glitz and glamour that certain crime stories that we cover on this channel tend to have, but the fact of the matter is, it is crucial to cover this. It is crucial that you know about this. And it is something that you should be examining when you're voting for somebody at the local level, whether or not they buy into this philosophy that settling should be the default position of your particular municipality.
Well, now building owners are getting smart. They have the cameras up. They're starting to fight these claims. Up to this point, they've been resistant to do that. Insurance companies want to settle. It's cheaper, believe it or not, it is cheaper for them to settle than to fight these claims. But now there's a movement to really start fighting these because you look at those videos and you go, this can't be.
And right here, what do we see? We see the same myth being repeated for everyone, that it's cheaper because on an individual level that it is. Here's what should actually happen. Here's an actual solution, because obviously the city of New York is not going to learn the lesson. What you have to do is create some kind of building owners association where every single one of these property owners, or at least a bunch of them, band together and keep attorneys on retainer so that they can fight against these cases. That way, the cost is dispersed among these different building owners, and you only settle when it's actually worthwhile to settle. This will create a deterrent effect and lower the fraud that everybody's experiencing. Instead of relying on the government, which is obviously in the business of protecting the criminal, people have to come together and form their own associations, and essentially you need a protection racket, a legal one, to fight off these claims that disperses the costs, because the idea that lawyers are too expensive for any individual case is the thing that leads us to this situation, this perilous situation that we're in as a city. So no, I don't agree that it's cheaper. They need to fight back. That is a myth that, despite being commonly believed, is 100% false, and the proof in the pudding is in the taste. But unfortunately, some idiot is sprawled out in front of the damn pudding shop. There's not even a crack there. Anyway, that's all I really have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, show me by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on the social medias, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about insurance fraud in the city of New York. Till next time.